I know you've probably already read the title by now.
I know that some of you guys may be wondering about the future of Smosh now that Anthony's gone.
They didn't warn any of their employees that this was going to happen. They just shut down today.
Why don't you and I take a little trip down memory lane? YouTube's launch in 2005 not only gave entertainers the chance to flex their creative muscles, but made for a viable alternative to the increasingly sanitized nature of mainstream entertainment. It quickly became a place of refuge for the younger generation, as kids and teens had the chance to evade stress and temporarily forget about their everyday problems through the means of this guy. Yeah, may not exactly have the same appeal now, but these were the fundamentals that made YouTube the video sharing powerhouse it is today. Without these faces, the site would look completely different. And without the authentic connection these individuals made with their audiences, they wouldn't have been able to break such monumental ground at the crucial time in which they did. But what happens when that familiarity is suddenly abrupt by an outside force? And when does an entity become so eerily similar to the mainstream standard it once served as an alternative for? I think the answer to this little quandary may be found while taking a look at the vast history of one of YouTube's most beloved channels, Smosh. Smosh consists of 2 members, and you know what else you have 2 of? Our sponsor today is Manscaped. Being the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene, the world's first all-in-one manscaping kit makes shaving below the belt easier and safer than ever before. In fact, I'm proud to boldly stake my claim as one of the first owners of the new Lawnmower 3.0 water-resistant trimmer, which happens to be the only body trimmer on the market with advanced skin-safe technology, minimizing the risk of nicks and cuts that can often come along with preserving your Sorry, we're still on YouTube. Its 90-minute battery life and beautiful built-in light makes the Lawnmower 3.0 perfect for 90-minute shaves in a power outage, if that's your thing. Not to mention all the additional add-ons like the Crop Preserver deodorant and the Crop Reviver toner. Get 20% off your order today plus free shipping with the code JAWBRY at manscaped.com. I'd recommend the Perfect Package 3.0, which not only comes with the Lawnmower 3.0, but a free pair of boxers and this nifty little travel bag for a limited time only. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Just use code JAWBRY at checkout. Huge thanks again to Manscaped for keeping my pubes short and my wallet fat. Now, on to Smosh.
When I was 14, I made Smosh as a website, and I loved creating that. I loved hearing feedback from people, what they liked about this website, and just kind of like refining it and making it something that people were excited to use. And it originally started off as just a website for me and my group of friends to talk on like a forum together, really? Like really before social media was a thing. And then that's a good one.
Anthony Padilla and Ian Hecox go back quite a long time, to their 6th grade science class to be exact. Over time, the two became pretty well acquainted with one another, as Anthony would often drive Ian home from school, managing to juggle coding on top of his regular classwork, spending his free time creating flash games and videos on his own Newgrounds account. But it wasn't until the year 2002 when Anthony first brought Smosh into existence. At just 15 years old, originally intended as a small social media site for his friends at school, Smosh.com could only be described by Ian decades later as sort of a Newgrounds-inspired platform.
Basically, the word Smosh was like an inside joke between our friends, because our friend couldn't say words, and he said...
So you're making fun of his...
Yeah, we made fun of him, yeah.
Cast lips.
And he said...
was that Smosh Pit?
Yeah, he said, he was like, I was at a Blink-182 concert, there was a Smosh Pit. And we were like, what? And he's like, yeah. So then Smosh became a word that just meant whatever. He created kind of like a rip-off Newgrounds, Like, do you guys remember Newgrounds?
Yeah,
It was like
yeah,
the
I remember
animation
it very
website.
well.
We were around then.
Keep in mind, this was years before YouTube ever came about, so you could say Smosh was quite literally ahead of its time, with several other notable creators attributing the site to the start of their own careers. But Anthony was still paying for the server out of pocket, and as word spread around campus and the site began to receive more traffic, the more expensive it was to keep online. So it was only a matter of time before they would need to come up with an alternative, which is around the time a little site called YouTube began to pop off. The first Smosh video to be published on YouTube wasn't even uploaded by Ian or Anthony. In fact, neither of them had even heard of the site before one of their lip sync videos was reposted by one of their fans. With the increasing popularity of this new platform, along with the gradually increasing price of Anthony's server, YouTube seemed like the perfect opportunity for two young entertainers, as the channel Smosh was first introduced on November 19th, 2005. Now, back in the early days, YouTube videos were promoted much differently. If you were lucky enough, you could get your video featured on the front page, putting your content in front of potentially millions of new people. And with the abundance of videos they had been dumping onto their new channel, it was only a matter of time before a Smosh video would finally fall on YouTube's radar. And the day that happened would be the first defining moment of Ian and Anthony's careers.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
The very first Smosh videos consisted of Ian and Anthony lip-syncing to popular songs in Anthony's room. They were basically the prime example of what YouTube was intended for, just a couple of teens having fun with a shitty camera. And although it wasn't anything too out of line from the 3 prior lip-sync videos they had already posted, it was their Pokemon video that was plastered across the coveted front page of YouTube, single-handedly introducing Smosh to millions of new eyes. Being their fastest growing video to date, it quickly became the most viewed video on the entire platform, clocking in at about 24 million views before being hit with copyright shortly after. But that didn't matter, because at the end of the day, Smosh had gained about 3,000 new subs, making them the biggest channel on all of YouTube at the time. At the brink of 2006, Smosh was destined for greatness, and the years that followed would prove just that.
Millions of viewers now from all over the world are logging on to view their short films and video projects.
Anthony Padilla and Ian Hecox scribbled their ideas on a notepad and then turned them into short video clips.
Alternating between sketch comedies and music videos, Ian and Anthony began to take their content away from the legally murky nature of lip-syncing songs and down a more genuinely creative avenue, one that allowed them to place their comedic abilities on full display. And maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but Smosh's early stuff really wasn't all that bad looking back. I mean, I would spend hours binging this stuff as a kid, so it's good to look back and know my taste, it could have been worse.
Let's come together and live in this world like a unibrow on an Indian girl, and we should dance to these stereotypes. Check it out now.
Their respectable consistency led to an influx in numbers and online success, garnering media attention as early as the summer of 2006. The way YouTube worked back then allowed the two to go from bored high school students to being featured in Time magazine in under a year. Not to mention how their growing recognition was enough for them to open up a P.O. box, which ultimately kicked off the series I personally enjoyed the most.
Dun dun dun, we have a crap ton more mail to open.
And it's all boxes still.
Let's open some mail.
Around 2008, when Google purchased YouTube, AdSense finally became available, which meant the profits made from these videos could later be put back into making more content, which is when they hired an entire team to help bring their vision to life. Videos became HD, writing became better than ever before, and it was clear to many fans that Smosh was hitting their stride, launching several additional channels like L Smosh, Smosh Pit, Smosh Games. Slowly but surely, Essentially, they were taking over the YouTube game, being the most subscribed channel 3 different times throughout their career. In fact, Smosh had gotten so big that they had pulled over 700 million total views by 2011. The same year, they were bought out by a company known at the time as Alloy Digital. An extremely pivotal moment we'll get into a little later. But for now, it's important to underline the sheer marketability this channel had at the time. I mean, they were practically dominating the algorithm with every single upload, brilliantly cashing in on popular video games and movies with their song parodies. Raking in tens of millions of views with their Pokemon IRL series.
Alright, Pikachu, annihilate him with a Thunder Shock! Pikachu!
And I mean, their annual food battle videos were so popular. I remember hearing about it at school. They even found the funding to introduce Food Battle the game in 2013. With an impressive production value that accompanied their hefty following, they were able to take their talents to the next level, scratching the surface of mainstream exposure yet again with their commercial film debut, The Smosh Movie. Distributed by Lionsgate and directed by Bill from Bill and Ted. What the f***? This movie was met with some pretty diverse feedback.
Smosh the movie is one of the most lifeless, empty, and pointless films I've ever seen.
I mean, I won't exactly get into it here because I haven't seen it, but a lot of the reception seemed pretty critical of Ian and Anthony's acting. Not like they had zero experience in it, it was just an entirely different medium than they were used to.
Is it weird to say the closer this guy gets to my butthole, the better it feels?
A little bit.
Plus, it was natural for the writing to seem a bit watered down when you consider how many people this thing had to pass through. Turns out making a movie may not be the same thing as shooting a YouTube video in your bedroom.
It seems to me that they're famous for absurdist, random, and surreal comedy that works for a 5-minute YouTube video with fast pacing. But alternatively to Smosh the movie taking elements of what makes them funny/popular in the first place and translating that into a movie of the same tone, energy, and style, instead they opt for the most generic and fucking boring idea possible. It's a safe, predictable high school reunion comedy.
Didn't stop them from landing a second one the next year, of course, this one being a YouTube Red exclusive that was met with seemingly more positive reviews. Although it was great to see the duo breaking new ground as YouTubers, it was this era that began to change Smosh in a drastic way. With 5 new regular cast members being added in 2015, the skits became more elaborate, brand new series were introduced to the channel, and their subject matter made its most noticeable change yet. Some videos didn't contain Ian or Anthony at all. It was apparent to lifelong Smosh fans that their creative process was going through a period of change. But nobody could have expected what was to come in 2017.
I'm leaving Smosh. Or I guess as of today, I've left Smosh. Oh God. This has been something that I've been contemplating for a really, really long time. And
on June 14th, 2017, Anthony officially announced his departure from the brand he had conceived a decade and a half prior, sending shockwaves throughout YouTube and the internet as a whole. I mean, despite how the cast had grown and how their content had diversified, Anthony was still, of course, a main face of their brand. But after generating an estimate of 11 billion views with a B, it was time for Anthony to branch out on his own. For the first time in his entire career, he'd be creating new content on his own, without the company of his best friend. A difficult adjustment to say the least, but many fans couldn't have been more supportive. Though that didn't stop speculation either. I mean, this decision came via a 5-minute video published to Anthony's personal channel, where he did everything but talk in depth about this otherwise life-changing decision. To rack up enough courage to take this career-altering step in a brand new direction was impressive, but it still felt felt as if he was holding back, like we didn't know the full story. He and Ian were quick to reassure the masses that nothing had happened between them personally, and with Anthony still consistently showing his support for the faces of Smosh even after he left, the main point of contention seemed to lie elsewhere. A few of Anthony's vague comments sort of alluded to more internal issues at bay behind the scenes, more specifically at Defy Media.
Smosh's former parent company, Defy Media, is being hit with a class action lawsuit after they mysteriously announced that they were shutting down on November 6th. They have bought a business built on nothing.
As we touched on earlier, Ian and Anthony sold their channel to a company called Alloy Digital in 2011 for $0, to be clear. That's right, they sold a 4 million sub channel for mere stock in Alloy Digital, which is only valuable if the company goes public, which Alloy never did, but that's besides the point. See, they eventually merged with Break Media to form what became known as Defy Media, a popular multi-channel network that offered special protections to YouTubers, often in exchange for a cut of their ad revenue. YouTube would give your money to the MCN, who would then dictate when you got the paycheck. So you might be wondering, why even join an MCN? At one point, you needed to be a part of an MCN in order to have certain features like custom thumbnails, or even ad revenue in general. But they were especially useful to anyone who dealt with copyrighted material, i.e. movie, video game reviewers. MCNs could prevent copyright claims from happening, ideally putting more money into the creator's pocket, along with an increased CPM and access to better resources and connections, better sponsorships. It seemed like a sweet deal on the surface to Ian and Anthony, but the fact of the matter was they really had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And honestly, how can you blame them? It was 2011, nobody knew anything.
Some exciting news about Smosh. Tell me what's going on.
Well, Smosh is just an amazing sensation. Every Friday we put out a video, and 3 to 5 million kids on the weekend watch it. 12 to 34-year-old boys and girls will watch it every single Friday. It's the #1 rated show, both television and internet, for 18 to 34-year-olds.
You guys have created magic. You guys are doing what all these big companies want to do. You're #3 on YouTube. Everybody knows who you are. If you had to talk to the corporate people right now, what's your tip for how to do what you're doing?
Do what you love. Do stuff that your friends enjoy and that you enjoy. Don't try to create something that you think is going to make it big or that you're going to make money off. People can tell that you're just doing it for that. You got to do it because you actually really enjoy it.
See, the practices of MCNs aren't always as ethical as they may want you to believe. And that's because of a loophole that many of them have been quick to exploit over the past couple years. One that a former employee of Defy Media, MatPat, outlined pretty well back in 2019.
Think of it this way. It's like if your paycheck before it got sent to your house was sent to like the water company, and then like the electric company, and then McDonald's, and whatever other services that you planned on using for the duration of that month, and then it eventually reaching your own pocket. Everyone gets their cut, and then you finally get access to the money that you rightfully own. But when a lot of these companies are representing hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of channels, there is no way that you can actually give services to all of them. Especially not services that merit you taking that much money from them. Just a fact. It's still your money that you earned at your job at the end of the day, but it went through everyone else's hands first.
As ad revenue was being passed through MCNs before ever reaching the creator, these companies would often turn around and use that money to make their company appear more valuable than it really was in the face of big investors, which is how Defy managed to land up to $70 million in funding before falling under. Because it was built on nothing. The company was nothing without its creators.
Here they are, receiving hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of checks from YouTube for all their different creators' AdSense. Sometimes that money is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of that money, they're maybe keeping 10-20% of it, but on paper, it all looks like the company's money, Defy's money, because it's sitting in a big bank account that aggregates all this stuff. So why would anyone care about this? Well, because big pots of money are attractive to investors.
It was the massive success of channels like Smosh that gave Defy Media value in the first place. So they were not only repressing the creativity of their clients' content, they were using a disproportionate amount of their money in a dishonest attempt to line their own wallets. And it wasn't just Smosh either. Chris Stuckman originally signed on to Defy under the agreement that he would be getting 100% of his hard-earned ad revenue, which worked at first until they eventually started asking for a 10% cut. Over time, that percentage grew, and they were even starting to place holds on some of his payments, which is only a slight problem when you're an adult with bills and a mortgage. No wonder Anthony decided to bow out when he did. The crooked nature of MCNs, and Defy specifically, heavily contributed to the eventual split between Ian and Anthony. They were both sick of having to deal with such a corrupt business that Anthony couldn't take it anymore and decided to reluctantly walk away from the family he had devoted over a decade of his life to.
I've been holding on to these memories and hoping that someday Smosh would be like how it was when we first started. Before Smosh was a brand owned by a company. And I had to come to terms with the fact that Smosh being part of a company has put all of my creative decisions through a filter of what's appropriate for the Smosh brand as deemed by the company.
His creativity was being repressed. He wasn't having fun anymore, and on top of everything else, they were being spearheaded by a company who had all but their clients' best interests in mind.
They came to me one day and were like, hey, we're gonna have you do a science show called Smosh Lab. And I was like, okay. They're like, yeah, because you'll be like the science one. I'm like, I don't know anything about science, but okay. And they weren't doing well overall because I feel like it didn't show us off.
It's not authentic.
Yeah, we were given a lot of lines. We were like, this isn't...
Many MCNs operate with the intent to steal from their clients and lie to their investors, so they could ideally sell before the bottom fell out and the company became worthless. But unfortunately, in the case of Defy, they never got to sell. In fact, they shut down out of nowhere in 2018, a decision that made a lot of people very happy.
So we were all working at our parent company, Defy.
The going is rough, it's gonna get rougher. The going is tough, it's gonna get tougher. So if you
and like there were like rumblings around the office that things weren't too great, and there were people that were starting to trickle out of the company.
Yeah, you know what? They screwed over my friends today.
On November 6, 2018, all affiliates of Defy Media received an email that the massive NCN was ceasing all operations effective immediately, making the sudden decision to lay off every single employee who had been working at their Beverly Hills production office. Apart from a few layoffs earlier in the year, this cataclysmic move came without warning or prior communication with their clients, as stated openly by Anthony himself that very same day. In a 7-minute video on his own channel, Anthony hinted at the heavy-handed nature of Defy's business practices and blamed the company largely for his final decision to leave Smosh the previous year.
The last few months that I worked there, they started hiring new cast members and starting and stopping shows without consulting me first, which, you know, they had every right to. They owned the company. I was just an employee, but it hurt a little bit. I felt like I created this thing with my buddy and we should kind of be consulted about these things.
Not only had they been terrible for Smosh's content, but their questionable tactics had led to the eventual decay of the company itself, as they were rumored to be around $10 million in debt at the time of shutting down, leaving countless talents from channels like Smosh and Clever out of work and without their fair share of ad revenue for the unforeseeable amount of time, given how Defy's assets were seized the same day they were meant to pay their creators.
That company was drawing in millions of dollars every year, and I was seeing a fraction of that. I have no idea where all that money went that the company was making, which I also just read had millions of dollars invested into it last year, and now it's gone. Where did all that money go?
The money was then passed along to Ally Bank, who was in charge of distributing the estimated $1.7 million to its rightful owners, which of course never happened. It was very much a worst case scenario for anyone in the general vicinity of Defy, and led to a legal nightmare that ended up lasting for a good few months.
Because of the way that the company was shut down, it was complete anarchy. Like there was nobody saying like, okay, now you don't have jobs, this is what you're doing. There was nobody deciding what would happen with the channels.
The channels were locked at first. Nobody could even get into them, not even you, right?
Yeah.
Going into 2019, it was unclear of where Smosh was headed. Because here they were, stripped of everything they had grown accustomed to over the past 7 years. All of their resources, office space was gone in an instant. Although in search of a new parent company, many of the cast members confirmed that they would not have pursued a career with Smosh had they been involved in another Defy situation in the future.
In my head, I'm like, even if it gets, bought by this company, I don't know how I feel about signing on to it if it's going to be another Defy.
Exactly.
If it's going to be another one of those situations. I was like, oh, but what if we're controlled even more than Defy? Then it's not going to be fun. We're not going to get to do what we love.
I mean, because I for a long time wanted to be more creatively involved and not just writing and being in the videos. I had all these ideas all the time, and so I would go to somebody at Defy and be like, I have this idea, say it was a show or merch or whatever, and they would go, cute, okay, go back to get your makeup for the video, bye-bye.
For a while, it seemed like Smosh was going to get bought out by the highest bidder, which was scary because that's something nobody at Smosh could really control.
So when Defy went out of business, then it was in the hands of the bank. And it was just going to be sold to the highest bidder, essentially.
So scary.
And then we also kind of realized as we were going, we're like, okay, even if we get the investors, I won't have a controlling share of this company, and it'll be controlled by some random people.
Yeah.
So that was starting to be a little bit scary. One particularly bad one actually almost got it. Their whole plan was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take Smosh, and we're gonna just hire a bunch of other people in other countries and start new Smoshes there. So we're gonna go to Thailand. We're gonna find some just talented Thai boys, and we're gonna
welcome to the talented Thai boys.
And they're just going to be like Thai Smosh.
So they not only missed out on a sizable amount of money owed to them by Defy, but were also without a decent parent company for a few terrifyingly uncertain months, which seemed to mark the end of an era for these YouTube pioneers. Except Ian was still looking for a way to keep Smosh alive, and before long, a light appeared at the end of the tunnel.
As many of you know, the company that owns Smosh went out of business 4 months ago, and during that time, we had no idea what was going to happen to Smosh.
On February 22nd, 2019, it was announced that Smosh had finally been acquired by none other than Rhett and Link. See, Rhett and Link have their own company by the name of Mythical Entertainment, which has no investors and no debt, giving them complete creative freedom over the content put out by their clients. Operating out of a 17,000 square foot studio in Burbank, California, they ended up paying around $10 million cash for Smosh, which was acquired by a holding company representing Defy's creators, according to Variety.
For those of you that don't know, I guess we'll just go through this really quickly. Red and Link are the ones that saved Smosh. So it took you guys long enough to get on our pod. Jeez.
Well, we didn't want people to think it would be a regular thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Just about every original writer, producer, editor, and staffer was reunited with Smosh following Mythical's purchase. But on a wider scale, this deal represented a lot within YouTube culture. It proved that there is an alternative to the crumbling MCN standard, and that individual YouTubers could still manage to support themselves when needed. This was a massively important play that arguably saved Smosh from certain demise. And after the impressive failures of Defy, Ian couldn't be happier with the future of his channel.
One day it was like, we'd have a good meeting with somebody and we'd be like, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be the thing. And then next day we get an email back. They're like, I'm sorry, just in the time we can't do it. And it's like everything's gone to shit. We're all screwed. Thankfully, in the frickin' 0 hour, Rhett and Link come and save the goddamn day.
What was that nuts. Call like? Like, I don't remember. I don't.
It was like, well, we got on a call with them, and we essentially told them what we thought the price was, and the response was, I think we could do that.
Smosh's troubled past with Defy Media is a cautionary one, warning other up-and-coming creators of the potentially criminal outcome of doing business with a large corporation whose chief goal is to make themselves money. When the integrity of the content is not being prioritized, the entire operation begins to fall apart because guess what? Fans see right through that. For a brief period of time, there were Smosh fans who could tell things were off. Certain series were being forced upon members of Smosh that felt anything but authentic. Because the sad reality is that corporate executives are the most out of touch when it comes to keeping an audience happy. They don't know what the fans want, only the talent does. And no good can come from a faceless board of directors who value their own wallets over the creativity of their creators who, you know, make the money in the first place. Smosh has existed for many, many years and will continue to break records on the platform so long as they can exercise their creative abilities in the way they deem most appropriate. Today, Anthony runs his own series on his personal channel, where he sits down with notable online personalities in front of an audience of millions. Meanwhile, Smosh continues to be led by Ian, with a team of incredibly skilled comedians still managing to pull relatively consistent views on a regular basis, keeping the business alive and functioning through the help of Rhett and Link. It's obvious that Ian Hecox and Anthony Padilla have been at this game for a long time, and the longevity of Smosh is a testament to not only their comedic ingenuity, but the authentic connection they've had with their audience for so many years. And as long as that connection stays pertinent, Smosh will continue to thrive on YouTube for years to come.
Keep on, keep on.